Tonight.
We're talking about fraud, waste, abuse, and when a president can't look for fraud and waste and abuse, we don't have a country anymore.
Trump 2.0 making more moves to change Washington, but hitting roadblocks along the way. And weapons of war.
You don't fight propaganda with more propaganda, you fight propaganda with truth.
Why Ukraine's evangelical Christians see Russia's military campaign as nothing more than religious persecution. Plus, state of rest. The health benefits of getting enough sleep and the risks if you don't.
People treat themselves like they're computers, that you can just kind of flip the off switch and then kind of go to sleep. And that's just not how the body works.
All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. President Trump considers new tariffs that could shake up U.S. trade relations. Good evening in Washington. I'm Jenna Browder. A new week brings new tariffs. President Trump today announcing the U.S. will impose 25% tariffs on this time on all steel and aluminum imports, including from Canada and Mexico. Capitol Hill correspondent Michelle London has been tracking the latest on these, and Michelle, more go into effect later this week.
That's right, Jenna. The president said he'd announce reciprocal tariffs likely tomorrow or Wednesday, meaning that the U.S. would impose import duties on products in cases where another country carries out taxes on U.S. goods. Meanwhile, Trump's tariff announcement on steel and aluminum brought an immediate response from the stock market. Before opening bell today, shares of at least 4 U.S. steel companies rose sharply in futures trading. Among those, Cleveland-Cliffs had the biggest jump at 8%. Now, the move could potentially lend a helping hand to domestic steel and aluminum makers, but it could also raise costs for businesses and steel consumers ranging from automakers to soda and beer drinkers. Now, last week, after announcing tariffs on Mexico and Canada, Trump immediately got action on border security. But in a Sunday interview with Fox News, when asked if that was enough, Trump alluded that the tariff threats are far from over.
Is that good enough? Is that good enough?
No, it's not good enough.
So more needed in 30 days.
Something has to happen. It's not sustainable, and I'm changing it.
Yeah, and Michelle, how are both steel and aluminum tariffs expected to impact the European Union?
Well, Jenna, this would especially weigh on metal producers and key products like cars. The president of EU's executive arm is set to meet with Vice President Vance in Paris tomorrow as Europe braces for the latest U.S. tariff announcements. Meanwhile, Stephen Miller, White House Deputy Chief of Staff, Sunday suggested that Europe was engaging in predatory practices and that reciprocal tariffs could address value-added tax, which European countries apply to products, but America currently doesn't. Now, while also taking aim at Europe over its regulations of big American tech companies, it's important to note that the European Union has 27 member countries, and taken as a whole is America's single largest trading partner. Today, the spokesman for the European Commission said imposed tariffs on EU exports would put cooperation with the U.S. into question. Take a listen.
We stand against unjustified barriers to free and fair trade. We remain fully committed to a level playing field.
Michelle, a 10% tax on Chinese goods took effect Tuesday, which sparked some retaliation. What's the latest on that?
Well, moments after these tariffs on China took effect, Jenna, China announced that it had opened antitrust investigations against Google and a list of other American tech companies, including Apple and Silicon Valley's Broadcom. Sources close to Beijing say China wants the attention of head tech executives in Trump's circle. Now, economists say these imposed taxes were aimed at addressing overproduction in China. But right now, it's not clear whether the new steel and aluminum tariffs Trump is proposing would actually replace earlier tariffs or be added to them. Jenna.
All right, we'll continue to watch it. Michelle London on Capitol Hill. Michelle, thank you. Meanwhile, aggressive efforts to shrink the size of the U.S. government continue, drawing both praise and criticism. Elon Musk and his team have reportedly gained access to at least 10 federal agencies. And according to President Trump, the next targets are the education and defense departments. Even so, Washington correspondent Caitlin Burke reports certain legal challenges are putting these efforts to the test. Caitlin?
That's right, Jenna. Several actions taken by Musk and his Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, have been blocked, at least temporarily. That's led President Trump to blast those federal judges who he says should not be able to interfere.
No judge should frankly be allowed to make that kind of a decision. It's a disgrace.
Efforts currently blocked by the courts include the administration's plan to put 2,000 employees at USAID on leave, DOGE's access to sensitive information at the Treasury Department, and the buyout offer to federal workers to resign with pay or risk being fired. In response, Musk suggested on X that the federal judges should be impeached. Meanwhile, ahead of Sunday's Super Bowl in a Fox News interview, Trump defended Musk and signaled his next directives.
He's not gaining anything. In fact, I wonder how he can devote the time to it. He's so into it. But I told him do that. Then I'm going to tell him very soon, like maybe in 24 hours, to go check the Department of Education. He's going to find the same thing. Then I'm going to go to the military. Let's check the military. We're going to find billions, hundreds of billions of dollars of fraud and abuse.
Lawmakers from both sides weighing in.
This is a red alert moment when this entire country has to understand that our democracy is at risk. And for what? The billionaire takeover of government.
In this instance, we have Elon Musk and the President of the United States going over to the bureaucracy and saying, we're going to tame you. We're going to pull you back under the executive branch. We're going to look at ways in which we can find savings. And we're going to bring this spending curve down.
Despite being blocked from accessing sensitive data at the Treasury Department, Musk shared several, quote, super obvious and necessary changes where the DOGE and Treasury teams have agreement. They include making the government's books simpler to audit, more accountability over where the funds are going, and more frequent updates to the congressional do not pay list. President Trump also instructed the Treasury Department to stop making new pennies due to the high cost of production, vowing on Truth Social to cut government waste even if it's a penny at a time. Jenna?
All right, national security correspondent Caitlin Burke, thank you. Nathan Gonzalez joins us now. He is the editor and publisher of Inside Elections and a Faith Nation contributor. Nathan, so new polling from CBS News shows a positive approval rating for President Trump. 53% approve, 70% of those polled say he's doing what he promised in the campaign. Nathan, I'd like to start with just your thoughts on that and these first few weeks of the second Trump administration.
Well, Trump is as popular or more popular than he's been in a very long time. I think this is what we would refer to as the honeymoon period. When you look at the national average, he's about 5 points above water. Or his approval rating is 5 points better than his disapproval rating. So in one way, that's good for Trump. But when you look at the data a different way, he's at about 49% approval on the national average, according to 538. 49% is about the same percentage that voted for him in the 2024 election. And so it's not as if there's widespread love for him. It's usually the people that are voting for him, like him, think he's doing a good job. And we'll see if he's able to maintain that.
Do you think he's making inroads with people who are not necessarily his tried and true supporters, but people more toward the middle and even maybe a little bit in the left?
I think there are a lot of people in a wait-and-see mood. They're waiting to see how all of these changes, executive orders, all of this movement fast and in one direction, to see how does it affect their daily life. There's certainly more skepticism on the left in terms of what he's doing and how he's doing it. But for those in the middle, I think they understand that the status quo is not working for them, and they may not like Trump personally, but they want to see how it works out, and that's where it's up to Trump and the Republicans to prove that what they're doing is ultimately going to help people in their daily life.
Nathan, let's talk about Elon Musk. Critics say, he wasn't elected and therefore he shouldn't have this kind of power. Supporters, they see it differently. Vice President Vance put it this way on X. He says, no one voted for Elon Musk. They did, however, vote for Donald Trump, who promised repeatedly to have Elon Musk root out wasteful spending in our government. Nathan, what do you make of this whole situation?
Well, when you take a step back, it is true that Trump's top donor, Elon Musk, has now been elevated to a very important position and given a lot of authority. And I think there are a couple of criticisms. If we break down criticisms of Trump, part of it are the people and the process. Meaning that a lot of the people that are coming in to help Musk on this team have not gone through the typical security background clearances and protocols that have been in place. Then there's the criticism of what they're actually cutting. And those to me are two different things. And when you hear the president talk about waste, fraud, and abuse, some of the spending that they're finding, I don't think fall into any of those categories. It falls into partisan differences, that they don't like that the money was being spent toward X program or Y program. And that's a fine, valid argument to have. But where Trump and Republicans are coming into some conflict is that Trump was elected. He was elected president, but he wasn't elected king of Congress. He wasn't elected chief justice of the Supreme Court. We do have three branches of government that are supposed to be working together in order to, make all of this work.
Nathan, while I have you here, I do want to ask you, it feels like we're drinking from a fire hydrant covering this new administration. What are you keeping an eye on this week that we haven't talked about here so far?
Well, I think that's the strategy for Trump and the Republicans, is just to go out, go fast, and do so much that it is hard for critics to really get their eyes and ears on everything. And so I guess what I'm trying to realize is that as someone who focuses on elections are one of our primary places of accountability as a country or as voters. And these elections are a long way away. There's a big governor's race in Virginia and later this fall in New Jersey. We'll see what voters think about things, but it is we're a long ways away from that electoral accountability, and I think Republicans are taking the authority that they have and going as far as they can.
All right, my friend, good to see you. Nathan Gonzalez of Inside Elections, thank you.
Good to see you, Jenna.
Up next, new developments in the ceasefire talks between Israel and Hamas, what it means for hostages still in Gaza, when Faith Nation returns. Welcome back. A major shakeup in the Gaza ceasefire tonight. Hamas suddenly delaying a planned hostage release, blaming Israel for airstrikes and gunfire across the Strip. This comes just as Israel begins talks on phase 2 of the deal, a move that could free more hostages and lead to a full withdrawal from Gaza. Tonight, Israelis are calling on the release of all hostages after 3 came home over the weekend emaciated.
He lost much of his weight, but not his spirit. My father is strong, and I admire him. He survived hell. The return of the hostages yesterday leaves no room for doubt. They all must return.
Meanwhile, another major development, the Palestinian Authority, which governs the West Bank, is reportedly ending its pay-to-slay policy. The program funneled money to Palestinians linked to terror attacks and their families. During Trump's first term, the U.S. halted assistance to the Palestinian Authority because of this policy. Well, White House officials meet with European leaders this week to discuss ending the war in Ukraine. Nearly 3 years after Russia's invasion, Moscow is gaining ground while Kyiv struggles with troop and weapon shortages. But the war isn't just a military battle. Evangelical Christians in Ukraine are facing growing persecution. A new documentary, A Faith Under Siege, reveals their struggle and how faith leaders are bringing hope in the middle of war. Chuck Holton has the story.
The Russian war against Ukraine has taken a brutal toll, not just on soldiers, but on Christians who refuse to bow to Moscow's demands. Amid the devastation, a new documentary seeks to expose the truth about religious persecution in Ukraine.
The Christian role in this struggle is so critical.
We come to minister to them, to see them, to listen to them.
It's called A Faith Under Siege.
There's a lot of propaganda out there. Our thesis was you don't fight propaganda with more propaganda, you fight propaganda with truth. And the best truth is personal stories of folks that are there, that have lived this kind of stuff.
The documentary features firsthand accounts of pastors, aid workers, and believers who have been captured, tortured, or forced to flee because of their faith.
The folks that stayed in these war-torn areas to help and to minister to their folks and to others, to provide aid, were really doing some amazing stuff. When the Russians took over and found these evangelicals, they find them very threatening.
CBN News traveled to Ukraine to join former Green Beret Christian Hickey, who moved his family there in 2022 as a missionary to soldiers fighting and dying on the front lines.
We want to give the food hand with a Bible and pray. So we just don't want to give food. We actually want to give Jesus, and that food gives us the access and placement to have a conversation about Jesus.
A Faith Under Siege isn't just about exposing Russian war crimes. It's a call to action for Christians worldwide to pray and stand with their brothers and sisters in Ukraine.
God is our refuge and our strength, a very present help in trouble.
The film is getting exposure at the Museum of the Bible, and producers say they hope to shed light on the crisis and mobilize Christians. Our reporting on the ground matches the claims made in the film that evangelical Christians in Ukraine are facing targeted persecution at the hands of Russian forces. This is the Good News Church in Kramatorsk, and it's only about 10 miles from what is now the front lines of this war. Before the war started, they had about 700 people every week, and most of those people fled after the war started. But now they say they have a new church here because they have about 200 people every week who come that weren't members of the church before the war started, but came looking for help, and this is where they found it.
I think the biggest thing is really praying for the Christians that are caught in this conflict and that they're able to serve as a model for our faith, both in staying strong, providing aid, being a beacon of light to their community, as well as just an end to this war, a just end to this war.
From Ukraine, I'm Chuck Holton for CBN News.
Coming up, not getting enough sleep. It could be hurting your health. Tips to help you rest better next. Flu season is hitting hard with respiratory illnesses at very high levels nationwide, according to the CDC. Doctor visits for flu symptoms are the highest since 2009. 32% of flu tests are positive, almost double last season's peak. And for the first time since the pandemic, flu deaths now match COVID deaths. The CDC estimates 24 million people have been infected. Doctors say it's not too late to get a vaccine and take precautions. And with flu cases surging, a strong immune system is more important than ever. One big help with that is getting plenty of sleep. Right now, about a third of Americans aren't getting enough rest, and that can have serious health consequences. Medical reporter Lori Johnson has some tips to help you sleep a little bit better.
Scientific evidence shows that how much we sleep directly relates to our immune system function. Getting plenty of Z's helps repair just about every system within our bodies.
When people get the sleep they need, they're more productive, they're more creative, they are better partners, they're better parents, they're more empathetic, and their health is much better off, both our mental health as well as our physical health.
Most adults need about 8 hours a night to feel refreshed and ready for the next day.
And on the shorter end, like when we get less than 5 hours, that is certainly kind of a risk factor for lots of negative health outcomes.
Anxiety often creates a barrier to sleep. People who struggle with this should consider preparing for bedtime a full 2 hours before lights out. That means moving from work, news, and electronics to something more calming, familiar, and pleasant.
Oftentimes, people treat themselves like they're computers, that you can just kind of flip the off switch and then kind of go to sleep. And that's just not how the body works.
Setting your alarm clock so that you wake up at the same time every day, even on the weekends, is a useful tip to help gain control over when our body naturally gets sleepy, also known as circadian rhythm.
One of the things that happens with insomnia is that people try to kind of adjust their wake time based on how their night was, right? So like they have a bad night of sleep and they'll sleep in an extra 2 hours. But what that does is it kind of throws the whole system off. It actually kind of puts you in jet lag without having any of the benefits of traveling.
If you often toss and turn in the middle of the night, try getting up and moving to a different location like the couch. That can help your brain not associate anxiety with your bed, something called conditioned arousal.
So, you have your angstiness and your bed, and you need to break those apart and wait until you get sleepy again. So you don't want to turn on all the lights. You don't want to do anything really active. You want to go back to those relaxing things that are known to kind of bring on that sleepiness for you. And when you begin to feel sleepy again, you kind of repair that relationship so that, over time, when you get back in bed, the bed does what it's supposed to do, is cue you to fall asleep.
Exercise during the day tends to help us sleep well. So does a dark room that's a cool 65 degrees. On the other hand, things that can get in the way include caffeine and alcohol, which can suppress important dreaming or REM sleep.
The other thing that alcohol does is it's relaxing, right? It hits on those receptors in our brain that make us feel relaxed, but it wears off. And when it wears off, your brain notices, and that also leads to more awakening.
Also, try to avoid sleep medications and other aids.
Even if many of them are not physiologically addicting, they become almost immediately psychologically addicting, right? We start to wonder, can we sleep without these? And so it's a slippery slope to go down.
Lastly, head off worrying in bed by setting aside time during the day to make a list of your problems and the first step towards a solution.
Johnson reporting, and still ahead, a worldwide celebration with a special mission. Next on Faith Nation.
Download the CBN News app, 24/7 news from a Christian perspective at home or on the road. One place for all of your news. Breaking news alerts. Set daily prayer goals and pray for news stories. Read the most important news and watch CBN News Channel live. CBN News, because truth matters. Go to cbnnewsapp.com to get the app today.
Finally tonight, ballrooms, tuxes, and ball gowns made for unforgettable nights here in Washington and in other cities around the world. More than 500 churches globally partnered with the Tim Tebow Foundation for Night to Shine, a prom-style event centered on God's love. It honors more than 600,000 young people with special needs annually and includes a red carpet entrance, hair and makeup, and dancing with a catered dinner. The night is capped off with a crowning ceremony where each guest is honored as a king or queen. And we are going to leave it there tonight. Thank you so much for joining us this Monday. We'll see you right back here again tomorrow. Have a great evening.